Wrench, wrench, wrench. Alright, here I am in front of another older bike that I'm going to do some work on, get back on the road. It's a 97 Diamondback. I think it's a 1997. And there's an interesting story behind this bike. But I'm also going to talk about other older bikes. And you know, if you follow my channel, you know I ride some gravel stuff, rails to trails, all kinds of things like that, canal trails. It's not just mountain biking. And a lot of these older bikes, you know, people have had for a long time and they want to get them back on the trail and ride them and enjoy them. So I'm not going to do just all hardcore stuff. And if you remember back, I did the Kmart Kawasaki. I put a fork on that. And I took a threaded fork and I took a die and I ran some more threads and cut it and all that. And that's all well and good if you got the tools to do all that. But I have another bike that I'm getting ready to work on in the shed. I'm not going to work on it today, but I wanted to show what I'm doing to it. So this is something good. If you have a bike with a 1-inch neck, Suntour has these forks, and I think there's one or two other brands that have them also. But Suntour has these forks. It's only $80, and it's a coil spring fork. You could use the old style caliper brakes. It's got 100mm travel, but it's 1-inch threadless. And you can get a headset. Looks just like your 1.1/8 stuff, but it's 1 inch. But it goes together the same way. Now, it's regular bearings, it's regular ball bearings, so you have to grease them. But I think it was $17. So the fork was $80, the headset was $17. And then I bought this spacer so that I can use one of my 1.1/8 necks. They'll slide on here and adapt an 1.1/8 neck, so you don't have to buy a special neck to work with the 1 inch. But it's a real economical way to get your bike back on the road, on the trail. And we're going to get back on this. We're going to talk about this Diamondback a little bit. So what was interesting about this Diamondback, we were, last weekend, we were at Rothrock State Park, and we were staying with friends. And the owner of the property saw me pull up with my Lolo rack and my 6 bikes, and I came out, he was talking to me, and he had been into bikes his whole life, and he wanted me to look at his bike for him. He said, you know, he rode it for decades, and the fork collapsed. It has a Manitou elastomer fork, which basically means it's a bunch of little rubbers in there that work as the spring. And when they collapse like this, they basically came apart inside there. Now, parts are available for that fork, but it probably was going to be about $150 in parts, and being that the existing parts collapsed in the fork, it was going to be a nightmare to get apart. So we look for alternative ways that would be economical to get this thing back on the trail for them. So, got another one of these Suntour forks. Now this one, believe it or not, 1997 bike has an 1.1/8 threadless headset. Now this one was a little bit different, because this one has a preload on one side and a lockout on the other. But it was still $80. He could still use his caliper brakes. Now he has the center pull brakes, and that won't work. But he had another bike there. I was able to pull some brake parts off, so you won't have to buy new brakes for it. And then for this bike, though, we got a Jessica headset. Sorry, Jason. And these are about my favorite headsets. I mean, this is $20. I also have a neck coming for him. This thing's got one of them old style long necks. I got him a little bit shorter neck. I think he's going to like better. So I'm going to work on this today. I'm going to set up my GoPro on a tripod and record me working on this thing. So I'm going to get to that. Never worked on this type of brake before. Genuinely confused. I don't know if you ever noticed, but older stuff is always so much more complicated. I mean, that goes for motorcycle stuff, car stuff. I guess they were solving problems the best way they knew how. One thing I wanted to tell you too, if you hang on long enough, I'm going to show a clip from our weekend. I'm doing a video on the whole Roth Rock 4 days we were out there, but there's a lot of footage to edit. So that'll be coming. I don't know how that cable comes off. I'm going to have to rotate this handle and look. But for right now, we're not going to worry about it. So full disclosure here, I should be working on my son's motorcycle. So sorry, Stephen. If you didn't have one of these tools, you definitely could do it with a block of wood. I did it for years with a block of wood. The same headset we put in Tracy's bike. 34 millimeter. Most of the older, if you run across an older bike that's 1 1/8", it's probably going to be a 34 millimeter head tube. Even some of the newer stuff like the Aggressor Pro, they're 34s. If you're buying a frame, I really like the 44 millimeter stuff because then you could put the slacker bearings in, give it a little more rake, a little more slack. They call it slack these days. Alright, where is my fork? Alright, here's our fork. So first thing we need is this crown race here. Now this is a split one, so I don't need to install it with any special tool or anything. Goes right on, which is nice. I'm not greasing anything yet because I'm mocking it up for height. I'll give it a try cutting with a tubing cutter. That's what a lot of guys do. I don't know. I got to deburr it anyway. We'll see. We're gonna give it a shot though. I'm gonna try to be part of the club. Cut it with a pipe cutter. Okay. So I'm thinking I just want to give it a little more height. I'll add another spacer. I mean, you never know, right? You're better off to have a little extra. If you don't want it, then you don't want it. You know, you can adjust it with the spacers. I'm going to have to deburr it and all that. There we go. Lopped her off. Alright, so what I want to do is get my parts prepped. Now, one thing I'm going to talk about is this grease. I never ever grease the outside of bearings. It makes zero sense to me. But Captain keeps insisting it's the best way to go. Now, I used to always use automotive grease, and Yard Sale Cycles was doing a cameo appearance on Captain's Cog, and he talked about the difference. The bicycle grease and wheel bearing grease for automotive is different. So I started thinking about it, and automotive grease is kind of dense. So I bought me some of this bicycle specific grease. And for the first time ever, I'm going to put it on the outside of a bearing. I'm going to put it on the inside and the outside because, I don't know. Everybody seems to think you need to. Don't make no sense to me, but I'm going to do it. Okay. Totally crooked. There we go. Okay, we got the fork on there. I think I have a concussion. Nice though, huh? Back on the ground. That genuinely feels strange though. Alright, that's about as far as I'm going with this now. I got the fork on. I got to do some cable work and some other maintenance issues that I'm not going to bother filming. But yeah, I just want everybody to know you can update an older bike enough and economically enough where you can continue riding and continue having fun with it. I'm going to give one little shout out to Yard Sale Cycles though. I like the work he does with older bikes. He kind of does the same thing. So if you like this kind of stuff, come back. I'm going to keep doing more, and also check out Yard Sale Cycles. And we'll talk to you next time. Oh.